Millennia ago, humanity first learned how to split the atom and fashion it into a weapon, and despite all the advances of time, nuclear armaments have never truly gone away. Never, however, has this power been unleashed on such a final and planetary scale, at least to my knowledge, than on the planet below us. Once a prosperous hive world, it now lies near dead, a testament to this ancient technology's power, but despite the world's suffering, its populace lives on. In fact, they not only survive, but they prosper well enough to raise regiments for the Astra Militarum, meeting the massive demands of the High Lords of Terra's tithes without fail. These warriors are hardened, grim soldiers all, which is unsurprising given they were born and raised on a planet that bore witness to an atomic apocalypse, but their loyalty and their desire to atone for the events that led to the nukes is unwavering. They've become masters of trench and siege warfare, and frequently request deployment to the toughest of war zones, imbued with a fatalistic streak a mile long, yet never backing down from the grinding attrition they put themselves through. Often, if not always seen with the respirator units many consider synonymous with them, they are known as the Death Korps of Krieg, raised from the planet of the same name. My name is Michael for Tactica Imperialis, and welcome to 40k Stories. Krieg was a hive world, located in the Imperialis sector of Segmentum Tempestus. When it was first settled, or how it evolved over the millennia has been lost to time, but I assume this also means it was not a battleground of note in either the Great Crusade or Horus Heresy. Krieg was a trading and manufacturing world, a damn good one at that, and the planet flourished, led by a ruling council known as the Autocrats. Unfortunately, it appears that the power and success of their world went straight to the autocrats' heads, and like so many before them, they became paranoid, convinced that someone was going to take their power away. They were already decadent individuals, and a part of me is curious as to whether Slanesh's hand was at work here, but we'd never find out thanks to what followed. Krieg had been massively fortified over the years, part of the supposed defence the autocrats would need, and as M40 progressed, it became clear that even the Administratum's presence and influence was unwelcome. This came to a head around 433 M40, when Krieg officially seceded from the Imperium and the High Autocrat renounced the Emperor himself. Perhaps unsurprisingly, not everybody was on board with this, and a civil war broke out between Imperial loyalists and autocracy rebels. The war went massively in favour of the rebels, and before too long almost every hive city was in their hands, with only Hive Ferrograd remaining under Imperial control. The commander of the Imperials, Colonel Jurten, was under orders that Krieg could not fall to the rebels at any cost, but without the necessary fleets or resources to win conventionally, he took a drastic action. On the day of the Feast of the Emperor's Ascension, a celebration commemorating the Emperor's ascendance to divinity, better known as his interment on the Golden Throne, Jurten unleashed a massive nuclear bombardment across the entirety of Krieg in an event known as the Purging. You'd think the apocalypse would either wipe out the entire planet or at the very least stop the civil war, but it did neither, and as nuclear winter descended, the battles ground on. In fact, the war went on for another 500 years, as the Imperials gradually gained ground and brought the planet back into the fold. In the aftermath of the Civil War, the citizens of Krieg rebuilt in their fallout-covered hell of a home. The majority either live in vast underground bunkers that I assume have taken the roles of the cities, or they're out in the wastes above ground. The radiation is still lethal, and the air is probably just as bad, to the point where anyone out on the surface is required to wear a full face mask and respirator unit. Officially, Krieg is now a death world. And yet, for all its suffering, Krieg is still obligated to answer for the demands of the Imperium. The tithes of manpower that must be supplied for the Imperial Guard are as high as it is permitted for a world of Krieg's size, seemingly around 50 million soldiers per year, which speaks volumes as to both the size of the planet and the resilience of the populace. As far as we know, these tithes have always been met, and mutation has not become commonplace amongst the regiments either, thanks to an advanced eugenics program. These soldiers aren't just fresh-faced red shirts either. Recruitment starts at birth. Physical tests are commonplace, if dangerous, and the ecclesiarchy instills absolute faith and loyalty through a so-called cult of sacrifice. This is already more than I suspect many regiments will put their recruits through, but Krieg takes it one step further. The final test are mock battles and exercises on the rad-blasted surface of Krieg itself. Survive that, and your training is complete. You're probably indoctrinated as a martyr, but you're a member of the legendary Death Korps of Krieg. You'll be highly trained in hand-to-hand combat as well as trench warfare. You'll receive a standard issue lasgun with a bayonet and grenades alongside your armour and survival gear, and you'll be shipped off to probably one of the most hazardous war zones in the Imperium. Don't expect to receive any medals for anything you accomplish. That's just not the Krieg way of doing things, especially since your commanders will think of you and your squad mates and your other teams and your tanks as nothing more than the same way you might think of your ammunition. Hey, they don't call them the Death Korps for nothing now, do they? The modus operandi of the Death Korps of Krieg is very simple, and draws its roots as far as I can tell from the Civil War. Victory through attrition. Unfortunately, records of the regiments before the Civil War are either lost or forgotten, so we can't compare. The mindset is thus: if we have the greater capacity of men, weapons, etc., and the greater force of will, we are guaranteed to win, given enough time and attrition. This helps explain why the Krieg siege regiments are so renowned, though whether they're master siege breakers or just ridiculously patient is slightly more unclear. Supported by the Death Riders, cavalry who act as reconnaissance and who often become future officers, these regiments use their infantry in a manner similar to ancient humans in the First World War, I believe the term is, storming across no man's land, heedless of casualties. Their tank crews can't even expect good treatment. Although siege tanks like the Lehman Russ Demolisher are popular, they're used as cannon fodder and moving cover just as callously as the foot sloggers. The command structure is pretty standard, working up from squads to platoons to companies, etc., though sergeants are instead known as watchmasters and there's an overabundance of heavy weapons. There is one unique post though, the quartermaster, a remnant position from the Civil War who serves as both medic and mercy killer, as well as a salvager, redistributor of fallen soldiers' gear. Another quirk is that almost all specialists within the regiment, in fact everyone save the forcibly neutral commissars, are drawn from Krieg itself. The exception though, many of the highest rank officers are externally drafted, simply because the natives of Krieg are perhaps ill-suited to diplomacy or any of the other myriad duties a senior commander and officer has to fulfill. However, Krieg attachments are viewed with concern by those they serve alongside. Any external forces under the command of a Death Korps officer can expect the same uncaring, callous treatment as everyone else, and there's often friction between regiments due to their often wildly variant worldview. Attached commissars find themselves not needing to restore order very often, as it's well known that the fatalistic and borderline fanatic troopers will almost never break, but they still have a critical role. The zeal of the Death Korps can mean they don't think very well about long-term strategy or tactics, preferring to throw their lives away even against superior foes, and it's up to the commissars to both keep this in check and to act as voices of reason within the regiment. Not how one usually envisions a commissar's service panning out, pulling people out of combat instead of driving them into it, but with the Death Korps, nothing's quite normal after all. Though the Death Korps have fought on many hostile battlefields since their formation, most of their notable campaigns in the past millennium have been alongside or under Astarte's command. The only Krieg-led battle I could find was the Siege of Dodona in 936 M41. The Hive World had decided, foolishly, to withhold its tithes to the Imperium for reasons unknown. The investigators from the Departamento Munitorum were hanged by the locals, and in response, the Death Korps escort made the world pay. They set up their siege equipment in the mountains surrounding Dodona's primary hive, and thus assumedly the seat of the government for the planet, and they rained down hell. At the same time, their infantry surrounded the city and cut down any civilians attempting to flee from the massacre taking place in the spires and streets. To the credit of the hive, it took 5 years until they finally surrendered, though I have to wonder if the other hives were similarly encircled, already dead, or were just unable to counterattack for some reason. However, the possibly sadly unknown Death Korps commander refused to accept the surrender and ordered the bombardment to continue. Only after another 5 years did the shells stop falling, even though all life signs within the city had been extinguished 2 years prior. So yeah, they annihilated an entire hive with artillery and then kept firing for another 2 years just to be on the safe side. Yikes. Another well-known Death Korps campaign was the Battle for Tarsis Ultra, an agri-world that Robert Gilliman had promised the Ultramarines would always defend after a native soldier saved the Primarch from an assailant during the Great Crusade. As such, the Ultramarines' 4th Company led the defence alongside the legendary Inquisitor Cryptman, fighting a tendril of High Fleet Leviathan. While we do not know much of what actions the Death Korps took in the battle, Azuriel Ventress and co. grabbed most of the headlines in managing to fend off the Tyranids. Their commander, Colonel Stagler, ended up in command of the planetary capital for a time. Stagler and the 993rd Death Korps had been holding the line when they received word from the capital Erebus, yeah, I know that name's slightly ironic given what happened later, that the city was about to fall. In response, the Krieg artillery rounded on Erebus and bombarded it like hell, wiping out a Tyranid Biotitan along with the swarm accompanying it and saving the city after a fashion. Planetary Governor, smart as he was, awarded command of the city to Stagler in response, despite the protestations of the Council of Industry that governed it. Unlike much of what this governor did during the war, it appears he made the right call. While Ventress and a Death Watch kill team were ending the war in space by poisoning the Tyranid Norn Queen, Stagler led the defense on the ground with seeming success. Unfortunately, he did not make it out of Erebus alive, his body being found atop a pile of Tyranid corpses, but his men weren't about to mourn. The colonel had died in true Krieg fashion, on his feet, lasgun in hand, and fighting. We don't know what became of the 993rd Corps after this, though it is probable they were all killed by an Exterminatus-esque attack launched by Honsu of the Iron Warriors that stripped the atmosphere and left Tarsis Ultra lifeless. And there you have it, the story of and the information on the infamous Death Korps of Krieg. These hardy, fatalistic guardsmen are in some ways exactly what the Imperium demands of all its warriors, willing to lay down their lives in service of the Emperor without a thought. However, to sum them up in such a way does the Death Korps a disservice. The continued survival of their people, both on Krieg and in the galaxy at large, is somehow nothing short of miraculous, and despite their callous nature, I have almost nothing but respect for them. For now, though, we must leave this toxic world and its people behind, and move on. Our next stop is the home of a Space Marine Legion similar to the Death Korps in many ways, resilient even to the most virulent of atmospheres and relentless on the battlefield. I hope you can join me for that next time as we begin to enter the home stretch of our Legions mini-series. Thank you all for watching, my name is Michael for Tactica Imperialis, and I'll see you all again. Goodbye.